So hi everyone again. Hi Karen and Liz. Today is our last webinar and we are super excited to have someone from Canada actually. We have the honor to have the research shop from University of Guelph, Elizabeth Jackson and Karen Nelson. Elizabeth Jackson is the director of the Community Engaged Scholarship Institute. She provides leadership and strategic direction to the Institute and guides staff members in the development and in implementation of all programs. She builds on her research and teaching expertise in community engaged scholarship, practice-based research, and interdisciplinary approaches to social justice to facilitate mutually beneficial community-university partnership and foster meaningful engagement between faculty, students, and community. Karen Nelson is the research shop coordinator. She oversees the day-to-day functioning to the research shop. She brings her expertise in community health, rural development, social services, and project management to support the activities of graduate students working in collaborative research with community partners. So the floor is yours, and we are very excited to hear your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm Liz Jackson. I'm the director of, we call ourselves SESI, the Community Engaged Scholarship Institute, and Karen's research shop is one of our key programs at SESI. So do you mind? Karen's going to press the slide buttons because I'm going to break it if I do. So I have been the director of the Community Engaged Scholarship Institute for about 2.5 years now. And before that, several years before that, I worked in the research shop actually as a project manager, and I worked at SESI as a research associate. So I've been around our institute for quite a long time.
And I've been at SESI for 4.5 years. I did 2 and a bit degrees at the University of Guelph, so I've been around the university for a while. And prior to working at SESI, I worked in more community-based like consulting research, as well as other positions on campus.
So we thought we'd start by telling you a little bit about where we are. I know that we're talking to people from all over the place, so let's give you a little context. So we are located in Canada, as you mentioned, in southwestern Ontario, about an hour away from Toronto. And the University of Guelph is about almost 30,000 undergraduate and graduate students. And we have 3 campuses. We have 1,400 international students from more than 120 countries. And one of our strategic priorities in the coming years is to increase international exchange of knowledge. So I think we'll probably be having more international students as well as faculty at programs. So our university was established in 1964 when 3 founding colleges were amalgamated. So that's the Ontario Agricultural College, the Ontario Veterinary College, and the Macdonald Institute, which was women's programs centering on home economics and domestic sciences. So those 3 colleges came together to form the University of Guelph. And now we have 7 colleges. So along with agriculture and veterinary medicine, we also have a College of Arts, a College of Biological Sciences, a College of Engineering and Physical Sciences, the Lang School of Business and Economics, and the College of Social and Applied Human Sciences, which is where we're located. A little bit of history about SESI, the Community Engaged Scholarship Institute. So as I just said, we're housed in the College of Social and Applied Human Sciences. And we have 5 core programs, which are Community Engaged Teaching and Learning. So that's a program where community engaged research projects are embedded within courses. So students carry out research with community partners and they receive course credit. We have the Guelph Lab, which is co-directed by me and someone who works for the City of Guelph, so a political body. And that's a municipal innovation lab. We have a knowledge mobilization program, which supports capacity development for academics and community members in planning high impact research and knowledge sharing. We have the research shop, which we're going to talk about today. And we have a responsive research program, which brings together other threads of high priority research, such as Indigenous focused research, global engagement, and other priorities as they emerge. Recently, since I came into the director role, we've created a new strategic plan together, and we've explicitly committed to what we call critical community engagement, which means not just collaborative research for community members, but research that is explicitly anti-oppressive in its orientation. So we're working to change our practices and our partnerships so that those are informed by and contribute to struggles for social justice.
Still you.
Oh, is it still me? Still me. I'm like, we stop here. So sorry about that. So the Research Shop and the Community Engaged Scholarship Institute both emerged at around the same time. The Research Shop was founded in 2009 by our founding director, and as well as a group of students, staff, and faculties in our college and beyond. It's important to note that our Research Shop was developed in consultation with collaborators from elsewhere in the world. So Henk and Norbert, who are big parts of the Living Knowledge Network, and others were really instrumental in helping our director and our founding members to figure out how we might run a science shop in a Canadian context. So it's informed by science shops, but our model is particular to our local context. Can it be in this? Oh my God. Are we bored of my voice yet? Okay, so in the past, we just recently marked our 10th birthday for Karen's program, the Research Shop. And it's important to note that it started off quite different in shape and function than it is now. And we'll talk a little bit more about those shifts later on. The mission of the Research Shop is to work with local and regional organizations and collaborations to carry out high impact community engaged scholarship. So we work very often with social services and not-for-profit sector bodies, but the topics of research are diverse and they reflect the needs and priorities of our collaborators as time goes by and situations change. So we work also sometimes with municipal government, grassroots organizations, and activist networks. We do not currently work with corporate for-profit clients. So in terms of its impacts, the work of the Research Shop allows us to meet the research needs of diverse organizations in our communities, often organizations that would not otherwise have capacity, either financial capacity or labor capacity to carry out research. The Research Shop is a forum for graduate students, staff, and community partners to work together toward positive social change. We increase the capacity of social agencies to provide evidence-informed services and to make evidence-informed changes to their programs and policies. We inform and improve existing practices using evidence from research, community practice, and service users' experiences. And very importantly, we also develop student, faculty, and community capacity for rigorous community engaged scholarship. So we're both a research body and a capacity building body. We mostly,
I can talk.
Okay. You go. Okay.
So in terms of our geographic scope, we tend to work mostly with our local communities. So of course the city of Guelph, where we're situated, and as well as the county of Wellington, so that's the rural area that the city is located in. We do work with communities in Southwestern Ontario as well, because they often identify us to be their local university, especially because we have the agricultural programs. In terms of maybe you should talk about funding.
Sure. So people often ask us how we're resourced, where we get our funds from. So as part of SESI, the overall institute that we're in, the Research Shop is funded internally by the University of Guelph. So we're not grant funded or donor funded. We're funded by operating funds of the University of Guelph. We have a very well-resourced program. So we have Karen, who's a full-time staff member, and we employ about 14 students a year. Research assistants, and about 4 project managers, also students per year. So just some high-level impacts for you to understand how we work. Over the past decade, the Research Shop has worked with and trained over 170 students from all of the 7 colleges of our university. We've completed over 200 community engaged research projects, worked with more than 70 community partners.
So that was a high-level overview of just to sort of situate with the Research Shop within SASI and within the University of Guelph. So I'm going to spend the next 5 to 6 minutes going over our science shop model, so our Research Shop, to give you an understanding of how we work. So I'm going to start with talking about how we work with community partners. So as Liz already mentioned, we work primarily with organizations in the government or government funded or the not-for-profit sectors. Especially because we're situated within social sciences, we work mostly with people who have a focus on social services, as well as environmental issues as well, as long as there's still like the social aspect of it. We do not use a formal intake mechanism to receive and review projects. It's much more informal. So we really work to build relationships and discuss research needs with our community partners on an ongoing basis. And we do this by attending events, by hosting our own events, networking in various spaces, supporting our partners' activities in the communities that they represent, and responding to requests from them and other people in the university, and brokering between other programs as well. So organizations who are interested in a partnership with the research shop, usually they would meet with me, and they work with me to refine their research question and scope of project, which may be carried out in the research shop. It could be referred to one of the other programs that Liz mentioned within SASI, or another partner on our campus who might be more suited to the organization's needs or goals or their timelines. So the other big portion of people I work with, of course, is our students. As Liz mentioned, we have about an average of 18 students throughout the year, so as research assistants and as project managers. Students are selected through a hiring process, so we employ the students as opposed to many science shops who are curriculum based. And they're hired based on their research and writing skills and their experience participating in multi-sector partnerships and community and various community engagement type activities. That said, we are working hard and having a lot of conversations around shifting to include lived knowledge, lived experience on social issues, so that we can have a more, I guess, equitable hiring process and be more representative of the communities that we work with. So we hope to pilot something around that for our next big hiring, which will be in a few months. So students receive training in the principles and practices of community engaged scholarship. This includes research methods, clear communication, knowledge mobilization or research communication, and accessibility as well. They work an average of 5 hours a week over at least 2 semesters, although most of them stay for probably about 1.5 years. So a lot of them really commit to being here, which is really great for all of us, I think. And so the student research teams are led by senior students, so those are the ones we call project managers. And they're supported by 1 to 3 research assistants, so it just depends on the size of the project, and I'll talk a little bit about our projects in a bit. And all students are paid hourly for their work. So they get 1 wage if they're a research assistant, and then a slightly higher wage if they're a project manager. In terms of working with faculty or academics, the research shop doesn't really work with them. Historically, we did a little bit more, although I cannot speak to that very much because I wasn't here during that model. We do work with them in some ways now. Sometimes we partner with a course, although it's just not something we do often. And I will give an example of that in a little bit later. And then in terms of staff, as Liz mentioned, there's 1 staff, that's me. And so I manage the research shop. I'm responsible for all the student hiring, for the student training, partnership development, project uptake and scoping, and overall project management. Although I should mention that some of the hiring and training, as well as the project development, I do with my other SASI colleagues who are featured in that lovely picture we had on the slide of SASI. So as I promised, I'm just going to give you a little bit of background on some of the projects that we do, although it really, really varies. The types of projects we typically take on might include an in-depth literature review, a scan of existing practices, or community-based primary research, and really, especially in the last 2 years, a lot of program evaluations, especially as people are fighting for funding. The products we produce range from written reports to presentations to infographics like you can see in the middle of the slide here, or fact sheets sort of like you see at the end of the slide, as well as a range of others. And this is all supported by our knowledge mobilization coordinator. So I'll just quickly take you through a couple examples of some of our projects. So the report that you can see on I'm not sure which side of the screen it would be on for you, the left. Yeah. So that's the Yorklands Green Hub. So that is a organization that's located in Guelph that SASI has had, I think, quite a long-term relationship with. I think Liz, I was
their first research student.
Yeah. So we have quite a good partnership with them. So they have a mission to create a space for self-sustaining education, demonstration, and a research hub at a site in Guelph that's currently not being used. It's owned by the provincial government. Yes.
Yeah, I think
yeah.
so. Yeah.
And so they had asked us to undertake a needs assessment to learn more about what kinds of programming community members that are adjacent to their site might enjoy about their site and what might make them visit their site more often. So 3 students, so a project manager and 2 research assistants, were assigned to the project. It was a survey-based project, so it was through social media, so I think Twitter, and then physically going out to, this was over the summer, so going out to summer farmers markets in the neighborhood surrounding their site to distribute surveys to the community members. So in total, they had 131 participants who participated in the survey, and the results of the research that we did will be used by, or are being used by Yorkland's Green Hub in terms of developing programming for their site and advocating for funding and future use of their site as well. So the middle one you see there, that was sort of a unique project. This was a lot of work, but we were asked to create an infographic for family counseling and support services of Guelph Wellington, as well as the Canadian Families and Corrections Network. So this was a project that was both local and national as they partnered together. And so what they were really interested in is showing the typical journey of an adult offender when going through the Canadian criminal justice system. And they wanted to compare this journey to a process of restorative justice. So what it might look like when people don't go through that typical criminal cycle that they normally go through, but what a restorative justice approach could look like. So that's what this infographic, it's actually 3 pages, but there's one, you see the first page on there. That is one of the main outcomes of the project, was to be able to show that to their funders, to people, to advocate for restorative justice. And they liked it so much they ended up asking us to do a youth one as well. So we have 2 of those on our website. I should have mentioned earlier too, everything we do is, what's the word I'm looking for? Open access. Open access. So it's all available on our website that we'll have, I think we have a link in our presentation, as well as the University of Guelph Atrium houses a lot of research from the university. So it's all available to download there as well. So if anyone's interested, you can find it there.
And isn't that the infographic that was handed to the Minister of Justice?
It was, yes, yes.
So it went all the way up to the federal government minister, which is, and he found it useful. So that was kind of that was an exciting moment for us.
So yeah, it's really interesting. This was, I think, from my knowledge, our first time creating an infographic in the research shop. So it was pretty exciting for that too. Mm-hmm. And then the final one, I guess on your right, is one that's still ongoing. So this was phase 1. And this project was done in collaboration with the Canadian Federation of University Women, the Guelph chapter, and the Guelph Wellington Women in Crisis as part of an advocating project for International Women's Day. So its primary goal was to engage community members, specifically women, and even more specifically, women who might be typically excluded from research. In the planning process for developing a new library, so the new central library that's going to be in downtown Guelph, to make sure that their voices were included and that their input could be included in the new library's design and services. So phase 1 was a focus group we did as part of the International Women's Day event with our partners. And phase 2, what the students are doing right now, is going out to various groups that have been identified as priority neighborhoods in the city of Guelph, to go to women-focused events, to do surveys and focus groups with women, so that we can have that second phase that will go, that our partners will deliver to the city of Guelph and to the library.
Can I just say,
yeah,
one of the things that I find really exciting about that project is that it's deeply integrating our commitment to bringing marginalized or underattended knowledges and voices into policy making and decision making practices at the kind of centralized level. So it's an exciting one.
Yes, it's great. And they're I mean, all our partners are amazing, but I love these ones.
You love them.
So I'll quickly take you through a typical project work plan. So how I scope out a project and see it through. They, of course, can differ a lot. Our projects have been anywhere from, like I said, small lit reviews to we have some larger, more complicated projects. So the biggest one being we're doing one in a prison, and that's a whole other work plan process for that. But I will take you through a fairly typical one, which you can see here. So like I mentioned before, the first thing I would do is meet with the community partner, and I call it the project uptaking and scoping phase. So that's when I meet with the community partner to discuss the research request, assess the potential fit for the project with the research shop, and I'd sort of decide whether I will take it in the research shop, whether I have the capacity to, or whether I might broker it or move it somewhere else within the university, or sometimes it's just a no. And then if we are taking it on, I scope the project and assign students. Our students are hired sort of as generalists for the most part. We have done targeted hiring. Maybe we can talk about that later, but students are normally assigned based on their availability. If I happen to have a lot of students available at the same time, I would take the ones I feel are the best fit. But it's honestly usually based on availability. So once we've taken on the project, of course, we have to create a work plan for the project. So the students work on creating a work plan that we have a template for, and it details the project goals, the research methods that we will use, the deliverables. So as I mentioned, it's normally a report, but sometimes it could be an infographic. It could include a presentation. We can offer other things as long as we have the support and capacity to do that as well. And that work plan would be approved by the project manager, then it's approved by me, and then it needs to be approved by the community partner. So it's a very informal contract between the research shop and the community partner or partners that we're working with. A lot of our projects, especially in the past 4 years, have needed ethics approval through the university. So that would be a 3 to 1.5 year step, depending on the project, and depending on whether it needs the university ethics. We work with the school board; they have their own ethics. The work with the prison had their own ethics. So various people, especially when you get into health, they have their own ethics or like other regulatory processes we have to go through. So that can definitely slow it down, but it's often needed. So then, of course, the bulk of our work is doing the actual research. So after everything's been approved, we conduct the research. So it could be, or it could require recruiting participants and scheduling meetings, preparing research materials, or it could just be doing literature review and online searches for best practice type things. So it really depends on the project. If the project's a long project, we would be checking in with the partner quite a bit, especially if there's various protocols. If we have like a survey and then interviews, we'd be checking in with them in between and keeping them up to date on the project progress. That's normally the project manager who does it, although I attend the meetings as well. And then, of course, we adjust the research scope or work plan if needed. Sometimes this happens because the protocol we developed isn't working, or timeline shift, or a student disappears for whatever reason. So we just know that might happen as well. And then, of course, once that's all done, we prepare the project. So a draft is created by the students, which is reviewed by me and then sent to the community partner. Once we get feedback from everybody, it's incorporated and we finalize whatever the deliverable is. And then before we give them the final copy, we make sure that it's an accessible document. So our guidelines for the university and for Ontario is that it has to be able to be read by a screen reader. So we have a student that works with our knowledge mobilization coordinator to make sure that it is accessible. It will be accessible for people to read it. And then we disseminate the deliverable. So we put it on our website, as I said, which is open access. We share it on social media. Our partners hopefully do the same thing. So we just try and get it out there as much as possible. Anything to add to that?
Just that one of the exciting parts about the knowledge mobilization process for these is that because we're planning it from the beginning, like the research scoping includes identifying what is wanted and needed and of interest. So by the time we have our deliverables ready, there's already an audience for them. So, in a lot of conventional research communications, there's this how are we going to make people want to read our thing, or how do we figure out who wants it? We don't have that problem because we've been collaborating with them all along. So by the time the infographic's ready, you know, there's already a board meeting set where someone's going to present it to their board of directors or whatever. So yeah, it's very satisfying. And I think that the research students love knowing that they're writing something that's going to be read by more than one professor. You know? So
exactly.
that's that.
And then finally, I was just going to take you through very quickly the impact study that we did as part of the 10th anniversary. So myself, my colleague Kendra, under Liz's support and guidance, did an impact study of the 10 years of the research shop, although it's probably 9 years worth of data, but we'll call it 10. And so we presented this at our symposium November 8th, and we do have a 2-pager here that is very pretty that we will have on our website soon, and we're working on a manuscript to publish in hopefully Gateways, so that will be out soon. But I was just going to highlight some of the major findings that we found. So in terms of benefits for community partners, many of our partners don't have the capacity to do their own research. So whether that's the time, the skill, or other reasons. So enhancing access to research and data was the #1 positive impact. And I think that's the same for most science shops. That's what we found in the literature as well around community engaged research. So it wasn't very surprising, but we were happy to see it, of course. And so they noted that working with the research shop allowed them to get really valuable data that they can use that they just might not get. They also talked about connecting with, we're going way over. They also talked about connecting with knowledgeable and motivated students and how meaningful that is to them. Of course, we are not a fee for service, so they are able to access us because we don't charge. We help them increase their overall institutional capacity because they're able to make changes to the population, the programs for the populations they serve. They're able to use our research to help get funding. So that's really helpful for them. In terms of the challenges, many of them experience delays and obstacles because of the research ethics process that I talked about, which could really slow down the project. They've mentioned that sometimes students' capacities aren't really a good fit with them. So those were the 2 major ones. And I'm just going to really summarize. I know we're way over. We're just really excited about talking about our research shop. In terms of students, the main benefit our students noted was building relationships with peers and community partners. So because we're so interdisciplinary, they get to make friends and colleagues outside of the departments that they're normally in, and they get to work with community partners who they have a lot of them have lasting relationships with. So I even have a student who's on a board of an organization she was working with before. Of course, they develop transferable professional and academic skills. I think that's the same for most science shops. So it's great to hear them talking about that and gain knowledge in new fields that they're not normally working in. And in terms of challenges, the biggest challenges are around sometimes they're just not interested in the project they're on. I think that was probably more of an issue when they weren't really paid an hourly wage. I'm not exactly sure though. They have a lot of issues with managing expectations and responding to unexpected changes in the community. So a lot of them just aren't used to community engaged work, and that it does require quite a bit of flexibility. And then of course there's students, and some of them struggle with balancing their work with the research shop with their other commitments in school. And some of them have their graduate students, some of them have families, other jobs, etc. So I will leave it at that for now and pass it back to Liz. Oh, sorry.
So I was just going to talk really briefly about kind of contextual challenges to the work of SESI and the research shop. Would you like me to quickly go through that, or do you want to go to discussion? It's about 2 minutes. Okay, so I don't know how many of you follow Canadian and Ontario provincial politics, but we have a premier of Ontario right now who is very fiscally conservative, and if you can hear our implicit values and commitments, his are basically the opposite of that. So what that means practically is that universities are losing funding, and most of the organizations and social sector organizations that we support, nonprofits and so on, are also losing funding. So we're in a time of austerity. And what that means is that there's significant shifts in the needs of our partners. So where maybe they would have been doing program discovery and building new proposals, now, as Karen mentioned already, they're really more concerned with demonstrating that they're a good use of money and trying to prove via evaluations and so on that they're worthy of funding or to secure other funding. So it's a time of fear and anxiety. So it's changing the research we can do or need to do. There's also probably going to be very soon implications for the funding that streams to our unit on campus. So I haven't been told anything yet, but I would be shocked if we didn't have a cut in our student funding, for example. And so another challenge we have that might be, I think is, I was just at the Engage conference in Bristol last week. And I feel like in many contexts, there's an increased drive toward experiential learning as a way of developing career skills for students. So in Ontario, they're calling it career readiness. Career readiness is more important than the learning that you might do in other contexts. So what that means for us is that there's suddenly a massive appetite from the university, demand actually, that students have experiential learning opportunities that will help them develop transferable job skills. So this is amazing because that's what we do. So we can spin it that way. And I was able to leverage that rationale in order to secure provincial funding and hire a new colleague for us who's brilliant. But it also means that our collaborators in the community are under incredible pressure to host students and to accommodate demands from an increasing number of people. So what that means is that Karen and I and all of our colleagues have to do even more work maintaining the relationships and trust that we already hold with our collaborators and trying to help others on campus who now have an increased interest in this kind of work to understand how to do it ethically. So I'll stop there. And then I think our last slide is just to briefly point out that that we're kind of linked to many local, national, and international bodies from whom we continue to learn. And you're now one of them. You know? Yeah.
I think we went way over, so we can stop, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. That was very informative, and I really enjoyed, to be honest. It was you have a very positive attitude, and I think all the partners learned a lot. So thanks again for accepting the invitation. So any questions? If anyone wants to ask a question, it would be nice if you can briefly introduce yourself and your SciShop and ask the question. So you can just turn on the microphone and I can see who wants to ask something. Oh, Ingrida, yeah.
Yes, I'm Ingrida Getiene from Lithuania, and I also am coordinator of SciShop. And I would like to ask from what resources are you paying for students for being involved in your projects? Because we have no resources at all. So everything what we are doing by the free will. And usually we use this scheme of internship with students. So our internship students, we are doing this research. So how you managed to do this?
Yeah, and that's how we started too. So 10 years ago when the research shop was founded, the students were volunteers and they received a very small honorarium for their time. So they got $200 per term, which worked out to about $2 an hour for the work they did. That's pretty normal. And I think a lot of the other science shops in our country are working on that model as well. We have a very unusually supportive dean and a very unusually engaged university. So I think we're in a very lucky position in that way. So when I took on the director role in 2017, I went to our deans and I said that I thought that the University of Guelph building this kind of work and not paying students for their labor felt inappropriate to me. And I said that I understood where it came from and there was a huge value to it and that it wasn't a pilot anymore. And because we have, we have tons of other paid student work opportunities on campus that are basically the same job, but they're paid hourly. I advocated really hard and I asked them, is there a way that we can honor the principle of paying people for their labor? They're not getting course credit. So I said that I didn't feel very comfortable with the model and that if we wanted to scale down activities and pay them a little more, I was happy to do that. So to my great luck, really, we at the time and still do have deans who understood and agreed with that argument. I think also, I can't really say, it's not a heroic tale of me advocating and the right thing happening. I think also something else that was happening at the time was that there was a shift in policies, I guess provincially as well, about unpaid internships, and they were starting to be phased out. So it was a lucky moment, a lucky combination of excellent leadership on the part of our dean, policy shift, and so they said yes, and then they had to go and look for where they were going to get the money from. So to directly answer your question, the student funding that is transferred to our institute is part of the pot of funding that is allocated to our college by our government based on graduate student enrollment. So for every, I think it's called, I'm going to get the name wrong, I think it's called RAG funding. So it's like research and graduate studies funding. So for every full-time graduate student enrolled in a provincial university, a certain amount of funding is transferred from the government to the university to be used to support the costs of students. So we get a portion of that.
So nice. And
Very nice.
One more question. Usually when we are working with clients and agreeing on projects, we are aware that students will make research for them, as we are questioning the quality of research, etc., etc. So finally, in our work, we find this that I am a scientist also, so I promise them to check reports and everything and to follow process. How you are doing this? Yeah.
So I think that's also something that's varied over time in the research shop as well. I think that, so when we did shift to hiring students, we also, you know, when we weren't, when they were on an honorarium, you would get 15 applications and you'd hire 12. Now we have 150 applications for 4 positions. So we are getting a lot of people with high experience. So I think that has naturally helped increase the quality a little bit. Although it doesn't always happen. So one thing that Liz and I started when, I guess in late 2017, is we hired an editor to help. So it's a student, PhD student, but we have her that she edits a lot of the projects to help with the quality that way. In terms of the research, it's honestly still varies. So I find myself sometimes dropping everything because I don't think the numbers are right, or I just don't. It doesn't look like it's been analyzed right, and so we do the two role system. I'm not sure how to say it. So we have the project manager and we have the research assistant. So the project managers are like, their job is to manage a project and to make sure that, you know, the analysis has been done right, the data collection's been done right. It's also, at the end of the day, it's my job. We're all my job. But I'm relying on the project managers to really look at, to make sure the analysis is right. And usually it is, and sometimes it's not. And then I might, hopefully I catch it. And if I don't, then I'm going to the partner and apologizing. So in the impact research we didn't, just because we have such a small pool, we didn't ask when they worked with us. So when we have the feedback, some of them love our research and some say, you know, it's better than consultants get paid. And others said, oh no, the quality of working with students is bad. So I can't really say who said that when. I think that we still struggle, like a lot of science shops do, but I think because we have paid, just knowing, you know, comparing to my colleagues who work with students in course, especially undergrads, because I have almost all grad students, I have one undergrad. I think that makes a difference. I think having a dedicated staff, so myself, makes a difference, and having the editor makes a difference. So I think that we do talk about quality control and slowing down is the other thing we talk about.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how, you know, we're asked for metrics now. So this is the first year I've had to report numbers. and next year is going to be hard because we are doing really big projects and we're trying to slow them down, especially as we shift to having an eye to critical work. It does naturally slow things down, and we want to make sure our products are high quality so they best serve our community's needs. But it slows everything down. So I don't know if I answered you. I think that is, we're still struggling and we're still trying to figure it out. I do, you know, I tell the most of our partners are returning. They've either worked with another program in SciShops or with me in the research shop, or whoever did the research shop before me. So they know that student work can vary. But as someone who worked for a private consultant, I would say a lot of the stuff we produce in the research shop is actually higher quality than when I was working for a consultant who charged. So I think it just varies.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I would just say really briefly that one of the tensions that I find myself struggling with all the time across all of our programs is what Karen's just alluded to, the tension between quantity and demonstrating, you know, like 500 students and 90,000 community partners, which is really honestly what the pressure feels like right now in terms of securing funding. Universities are now going to be funded based on, you know, graduate salary, jobs in field, numbers, quantities, and that's not what is at the heart of our work when it's done well. So I struggle a lot with knowing that we live in that system, and I need to demonstrate, you know, efficiency and impact and those things, because that's legitimately how we're going to be funded or not funded, versus what Karen's just said so well, which is that we really want to do critical, ethical, impactful work. And we know that sometimes relationships, collaborations, like you said, the quality is dodgy, and then you're stuck reviewing the thing and rewriting it, right? I mean, that's really important. So one of the things I always say to people who are asking about it is figure out when it's okay to say no and honor those boundaries.
Yeah, sorry all the partners, but I have a thread questions actually about this impact, as we really need now to focus more on this issue. Are you doing some research or some other measures you're taking to measure this impact?
I'm smiling because it hurts. Yes, we are. And I mean, I think that we, as an institute, we're a little bit slow to get started on that, to be honest. So our deans have asked me very specifically to report on metrics. So in terms of graduate student training, research outputs, my question to them when they asked me this was, do you want to also hear about impacts for our collaborators? Because, you know, it may be that the funding scheme for universities does not care whether a not-for-profit secured funding or whether a policy change meant that more drug users had access to safe facilities, but it matters to us. So yes, we are. So we've started to, we're still figuring out how to do it and what to measure, but yeah, we're trying to measure a broad swath of impacts so that we're ready with numbers and figures for whatever audience is coming to us. But it's really, really hard. And the problem is because some of the projects we do are really small and they're part of a larger swath of coordinated efforts. You can't say that infographic saved 20 people from going to prison, right? Like we can't make those kinds of connections. So I would love to hear what other people are doing about evaluation and metrics.
Yeah, we have just started to go to this direction. So it's really important issue for us. And it's nice to share experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
With some of the other science shops that I've been working with, so in Queens, in Dublin, so Emma McKenna, Catherine Bates, Josephine in Brussels, whose last name is escaping me. So we're working together to try and figure out how what works for us. We've been sharing a lot of resources, so we hope, as Liz said, we are getting close. We do have the impact study, but that was over 10 years and it was a survey. So all we have right now is really like what I hear from partners on the spot, but we hope that it's our goal to build in a structure of how to capture this.
Thank you, Ingrida. Any other questions? And I think you were referring to Josephine Demari, right?
Sorry, what was that?
You mentioned Josephine from Brussels. You must talk about Josephine Demari. I don't know if I pronounced it correctly, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, she also gave a webinar. It was the first webinar we had.
Oh, okay.
Most of the partners know her.
And we met at Living Knowledge, and then we started talking about whether we could coordinate our evaluations. Yeah.
I see. Helen?
Hi, good to see you again. Thanks very much for that presentation, really interesting. I know obviously we talked right at the start of the SciShops project when I interviewed you for one of our case studies, and you mentioned that you were, because I asked you a bit about sort of having, whether you have an advisory board, and I think at the time you were thinking about resurrecting that. I just wondered whether that's happened, and yeah, it'd be interesting to just find a bit about how that works and the benefit of having that, who you've got on your...
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for remembering that. That's pretty impressive on the memory front. So SESI, when it was first founded, did have a community advisory board, a small group of kind of community leaders who would just help Linda, who our founding director, think through what research needs were emergent, best practice for creating the field. That fell away. I'm not sure when, but I don't think it was in place when I came in 2013. So it fell away at some point. So I did realize that I needed the sage council of people who are positioned in different places than I am. So yes, we do have, I've called them CAT because I like good acronyms. So the Community Advisory Team. It has 6 members and we're going to meet in January. So I've pulled them together and they're all briefed on what they're going to do, and we're going to meet in the new year. And their role will be to, in a way, they're kind of extending our network beyond the scope of our usual daily work and lives. They will offer me advice and feedback, and I said that I want them to be my critical friends. So they'll tell us about emergent issues or challenges in the community. They'll bring projects directly to us for a closer brokering relationship, but they're also, I've asked them to kind of hold me accountable. And I think that it's particularly urgent that I have people who aren't, you know, going to the council meetings that I'm going to and hearing the things about budget cuts in the university that I'm hearing. I need people who are in other places under different pressures to remind me about the broader purpose of what we're doing. So yeah, they're there.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Helen. Other questions? Giovanna?
Hi, can you hear me? Yes. Hi. I am Giovanna Grossi. I'm coordinating a science shop at University of Brescia. And the focus of the science shop is sustainable water management in a changing climate, because that's my expertise mainly. During your presentation, which was very, very interesting, I was quite surprised to see that you never mentioned within your challenges the issue of open access, even when in the typical work plan you were explaining all the different phases or the different steps. When you first evaluate the deliverable draft, the issue is how to communicate the results, and not should we really have all this information available to anyone, because that would be for sure one of the issues in Italy. So I wonder if you already select from the beginning the projects that can be approached with this open access procedure.
It's a great question. Yeah. I can answer it from my perspective, and then you can maybe answer from yours. So it's a good question. So one clarifying point is that we don't release all the data. We release the report on the data or the infographic on the findings. So we do have a no secret research policy, and we're pretty serious about that. But there have been cases, I know of one case where the findings of, I think it was an evaluation, the findings were so dangerous to the organization we were working with that I wasn't here at the time, but what happened was that there was a regroup and like, okay, so this puts us at risk. It put them at risk as an organization to publish it freely. So what we agreed through some negotiation was that there would be a report on the process of the collaboration and some of the findings, but not identifiable findings about problems with that organization. So I would like to not be doing that, but I understand completely that we're in contexts where people's livelihoods and sustainability of their organizations are at risk. So if there is a concern with publishing kind of tender findings, I think that part of the respect is to not do so or to find other ways. And another situation that we're going to encounter more and more is when we work with Indigenous groups and communities, there's a very, very strong principle that Indigenous communities own their research, period. So there will be a different kind, the same kind of negotiation, but in a much more explicit context when we're working with Indigenous groups, because they will want to hold on to all their data and knowledge. So what it means is that we have to be really good at negotiation and relationship. Does that answer your question in part?
Yes.
Okay. And
so
you
have to deal with this as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would imagine that the work that you're doing is potentially more immediately explosive because it's such a high profile issue. And if you're finding out that people are draining aquifers and then selling the water, for example, which is happening very close to us, it has implications beyond one organization. But yeah, we do deal with that. And then just a final note is that one of the challenges of open access in North America, at least, is that a lot of journals are putting stuff behind a paywall, right? So even open access journals are putting all these really burdensome conditions and fees. So you might have to pay a fee to have it published open access, and then there's a time lag. We get around that by publishing our own stuff. So we don't have a journal, but everything we publish is produced in-house, posted on our website and our library's resource. So we're not negotiating with publishers. We're not publishing almost ever through the research shop. We're not publishing journal articles.
Mm-hmm.
Did you want to add to that?
No, I think what Liz said is what I would say. I guess the only thing I could add is we are careful that they know ahead of time that we will publish the results. With evaluations, it can be trickier because people don't like having negative stuff said about their organization, but I think we write it in a nice way, and if we don't, they'll often have suggestions. We also rely on them to help us with protecting people's identity. So for example, there's one project I'm editing right now where there's so many long quotes used. So I'm highlighting it all and sending it to another colleague who's part of the project. And then we'll probably keep some of it highlighted and have our partner look over it to see if it's too identifying, especially because that project has, it is a higher risk just because it went through Correction Services Canada and a lot of marginalized people on the project. So I am concerned about that, but I think that's the thing is we know it's going to be out there. So we work really hard. Especially, like I said, on those projects where it could be obvious. And the one project Liz was talking about, I think that was one of the concerns. There's only 5 people.
It was such a small.
Yeah. And so she was worried that it was obvious. Like it wasn't obvious to us because we didn't know who the people were, but to the people reading it, she felt it would be obvious. So it's something we talk about ahead of time. I think if there was a project that was, I mean, you could comment on this, but whether, if there's a project that came that was really high need and it really couldn't be open access, there might be a way we could work around it, but I would have to request that from Liz.
Yeah, we've not ever had that. We've not ever had someone say, I really need this and I can't afford to hire a research consultant, but you can't tell anyone. Just to wrap that, I think when I'm thinking through the thought process where we had that one thing that was turned into a different kind of animal in order to be published, I think for me, the principle is that we don't do work that's only for one organization and we don't do secret work. So that doesn't mean that all of the learning that we get from, say, a program evaluation that impacts that organization needs to be published, but the useful learning that could apply to other organizations in that sector must be published. So the shareable learning is not owned by anyone, but once in a while there will be stuff like long quotes that a person says that just can't go into the world for reasons of their own well-being.
So just to toot our own horn too. And I should say that the number of downloads we get for reports is very high. Like I'm pretty shocked, and I was invited to go speak at a cannabis conference in Quebec because they saw that we did a report on cannabis, and so people find our stuff, so we want it to be there.
Yeah, we need
it's useful to even one of our research associates who has her own consulting firm was mentioning she used some of our research for really good research she's doing. So So we know it's high impact beyond our organization, and so we don't want to, like as I said, we just don't want to hide it when it's useful to more people.
You know, we're public servants at universities. We're publicly funded, and I really strongly believe that, particularly in a unit like ours, the work that we're doing is commons. Like it's the research commons. You know, it's not mine. It's not Karen's. It doesn't belong to one group. So, yeah, we try very hard to honor that.
But you're encouraging, still you're encouraging at least. So good to hear from you.
Great.
So I have a second very quick question. Have you already registered for our final symposium in Brescia in January? Oh. If you have not yet, you should do this because we are going to have a great time and I would really like to welcome you in Brescia.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that would be amazing. There's a lot of you on here that I'd love to meet.
Yeah. We will, the two of us will be at the next Living Knowledge Network conference.
Yeah.
If any of you plan to be there. So if you'd like to meet up, let us know.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Giovanna. Any other question? Maybe last question, because I see that time passed. Don't see any microphone on. Okay, so probably, can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, there was something with the network. So I don't see anyone else. It's already time. So I would like to thank you once again very much. That was very, very informative and useful. And we're looking forward to meeting you. And I would like to thank also the participants for being here and to encourage them to contact you if they have any questions later and if they want to meet as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and come to Canada.
Oh yeah, that would be perfect. Canada is very nice. Okay, thank you very much again and see you soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 Stop it.